Editor's note: there's lots of people talking in the hallway, and I cannot get them to be quiet. So yeah, we're just gonna have to deal with it. I am looking at a new microphone, so hopefully it resolves the issue. Um, but not much I can do. Let's see. What's this one? I'm trying to remember which community post pages I actually got. So that'll be one. Oh, there was an original one. I think Thames Water. I should have googled this actually. Thames Water. I'll answer it in DMs. I think this one because I can't lie. I didn't do enough research into Thames Water, so that's on me. It's higher to be a buyer. I don't know about that, Chief. But yeah, I don't know much about Thames Water, so that's something I'll have to Google. Hello, everyone. This one, Nadine Dorris is quoted in the Guardian politics blog as saying, "The Commons Privileges Committee should should grow up and put on big girl and boy pants and stop crying about hurty words." End quote. Are these the kinds of elected representatives that should be in the House of Commons, and what can be done about it? So, you get the politicians you deserve. Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, survived another birthday, so we'll see. We'll see what the next one is going to be like. Um, but yeah, with the question here, the problem is the party system. The party system is massively problematic. It means you have to be a member of a political party that has a chance of winning, which is the Tories or Labour, and maybe the Lib Dems in certain seats. And so what that means is that if you're not a lunatic or a really hard party stalwart, and you got to back the leadership, etc., then you ain't gonna make it. Independent candidates can't make it. There was one dude. He ran in the West Midlands. His whole thing was he was gonna do his best to basically fight for their local A&E, and he won based on the fact that he fought for their local A&E. So yeah, you do get a few independents and stuff, but it's not many. So yeah, it's the parliamentary system. You see it in a lot of other different countries. Unless like you've got like a hardcore proportional representation system, it's tricky to kind of break into the system. But the way it is in the UK with first past the post, it means like we're going to end up with people who are just lunatics. But if the party likes them, there's not much more you can do because it's the local party that selects the candidates. At the end of the day, the National Party does have some say. We've seen Jeremy Corbyn blocked, for example. We've seen other MPs lose their whip. But really, it's the parliamentary system. Nadine Dorris is, she's not that bright. Let's be honest. It's her. It's the lot of them. They really shouldn't be where they are. But the system has given us these politicians. It's generated them, and the constituents voted for them en masse. Whether you won by 1% or 30%. The party system gives us not the best politicians at times, and what happens is we people end up voting for them. That's all it is. It doesn't matter what kind of lunatic in certain constituencies they put up. If they're repping Team Blue or Team Red or Team Yellow, then they'll win. That's just the way it is. And so in terms of what can be done about it, it's moving to a proportional representation system. Potentially that could help. But you still get lunatics in depending on what system you do. If you do super constituencies, for example, if like a party, a lunatic party wins 20% of the vote, they could be given 20% of the seats. And so you haven't done much to stop the lunatics getting in. We saw that with the Brexit party in kind of in the EU, for example. Not the UKIP party. They managed to do very well in the EU elections. And yeah. So it's just that there is stuff we can do. Proportional representation will help to an extent, but that will also give us a different crop of lunatics. That's one of the problems. So the answer is you just need a better educated electorate, and I just can't see that happening. So that answers this page's questions. I will probably try and answer this Thames Water question. I've done some more research on it via DMs. Lots of people saying happy birthday, so thank you everyone for that. So a question from Ellie. What do you think the real reason for Sunak dragging out the Horizon Associate membership? I suspect membership needs full implementation of the protocol/Windsor framework. He doesn't want to do this, just promises all the UK lacks the knowledge or facilities to implement. That's a good theory, but the issue with that is we can get back into the Horizon program if we wanted to. I don't think it was down to the protocol. Once the Windsor framework was agreed, I think we're basically back into Horizon. He needs the special rebate on the Horizon fee he demands in order to look tough for the ERGers. The EU won't grant him that, makes him look weak. That one is probably the most likely one, so I'll come back to it. 3. Horizon membership fees are calculated on estimation of expected annual GDPs throughout the present term budget. The UK outlook for the next 5 years looks so dire he feels embarrassed to provide them, or maybe he fears these dire forecasts might be leaked. I don't think that will necessarily happen. So I don't think they fear them being leaked or anything like that, because again they're just forecasts, and we've seen forecasts be wrong and we've seen forecasts be right. And the IMF and stuff like that, they got kind of attacked by certain politicians because they're constantly changing their forecasts. So I think his option two, the option two is he wanted to play hardball with the EU to get some sort of discount on the Horizon membership fee to look tough. He was talking about building a rival with Japan and the US, forgetting that their time zones are ridiculously different to the UK's. You're talking 6 hours plus for the USA, and I think you're talking like 12 hours or something for Japan. I can't remember, like 9-10 hours for Japan. It would never have really worked unless you got British scientists moving there, or Japanese scientists coming here, or Americans coming here, or us going over there. It just wouldn't have worked. Plus, you need a lot of PhD graduates and all sorts of other groups of people to make your research project work. So, I think it's the second one. I think he's trying to look tough. I think that's why he's done that. So, Son of Viking with a question. Let's see. Cleverly and Sefcovic have talked this week about the UK joining Horizon as an associate member. They're haggling over the fee apparently. The EU say talks cover all the outstanding issues requiring resolution from the treaties already entered to. So Gillivan, Cleverly and Badenoch emerged from their EU talks talks in March, suddenly all sensible and blowing out the flames beneath Mog's bonfire regulation. What do you think not so cleverly and completely bad enough will suddenly become all sensible about this time? I think if you are a minister in government, I think it does change people. We've seen that with Steve Baker. We saw that with Chris Heaton-Harris. There's a lot more responsibility there. You can't go out, constantly trying to be a fire starter. The only one who really did that, you could argue, is Jacob Rees-Mogg and what's the big man's name? Kwasi Kwarteng. They're the ones that, when they were ministers, it didn't soften them at all. If anything, it kind of emboldened them and they did more stupid stuff. But generally, I think if you're a minister in one of the lower positions, it does seem to soften you a bit. We've seen that with Kemi Badenoch when she was getting mocked by the ERG really badly. And then she was getting mocked by the Labour Party really badly. So, yeah, not ideal. Let's see. Let's see. If number 2 is the case, the EU might tell him to go and do one. I think he'll moan about it for a bit, and then he'll just kind of crumble. I think that's what's already happened, isn't it? I think he kind of crumbled on it already. So we'll see. I think British scientists can apply for the grants now. So where has he gotten to? Really nowhere. If I remember correctly, little Brexitania wanted special discount because the 2 years outside of Horizon damaged UK scientific community. According to Fishy Rishi, the EU told them they'd get the discount for these 2 years of not being in, but not €1 more, since one was tired of the UK's cherry picking. They used this term unless memory fails me even. After all, it wasn't the EU who caused the problem, but the protocol non-implementation. I assume you know most of this and refer to the protocol Windsor framework non-implementation. Yeah, the UK really did kind of screw up. Hello, Blase. We did kind of screw up with the protocol, and the EU said like you're not going to be in the Horizon program, and we really got mad about it. So that was one of the issues. So let's see, what's the next one? Why Scottish independent support is so low, and how could it turn around? So that's a difficult question to answer, QA, because it's one I haven't looked at that much of. I think one of the things they could do is talk about the differences between the rest of the Union and Scotland, and where Scotland has benefited massively from devolution. And they can say, imagine if we had independence, what we could do with the extra money. Imagine what we could do with the funds from having our own currency, stuff like that. It's kind of like one of my favorite characters. I'll show you quickly, and I'll probably get the law wrong on this one because it's been a while since I've read his law. But this is Jax of League of Legends, and Jax's motto is he carries around a lamppost, right? Jax carries around a lamppost. And the reason he does that is because he's so strong that if he uses a real weapon, it'd be too easy for him. So his whole motto is, imagine I had a real weapon. And so, Scotland need to push the idea of, imagine if we had independence and we had control over our own currency, if we had control over these other areas, if we had a sovereign wealth fund like Norway or Saudi Arabia, like these other countries that can invest, money into projects and make big returns on them. Maybe not. No, maybe the Gulf countries aren't the best example of it, but if you look at Norway, Norway's Viking. If you look at Norway, look at these other countries, you can talk about they have sovereign wealth funds. We don't have a sovereign wealth fund because the government privatised the energy. They privatised the gas and oil, stuff like that. Really, that's something where Scotland could talk about. Something Scotland could push. They could say we could be more like Ireland, for example, or more like the Scandinavian countries, depending on what model they want to go with. But I think the important thing for them to say is we can do it the way we want to do it, rather than being told by Westminster what to do. And I think if they focus on the differences, that's a key starting block for them. But they don't do it for some reason. I don't think they're very good at campaigning, it looks like. I know they win in Scotland, but again, it's not hard for them to win in Scotland, considering that it looks like the Scottish people are more left-wing than English people. And when you look at the Labour Party in Scotland, they're not very bright. They're not very good at campaigning, and they take their orders from most likely central Labour, which is in a way different space politically than kind of where the Scottish people are. If you look at Wales, the way Labour in Wales are, it looks very different to the way Labour in England are. They're way more left-wing in Wales, unapologetically so. And that, I think, is one of the problems that Labour in Scotland run into, and it's given a lot of breath to the SNP, but it just looks like the MSPs just... Do you know, this is controversial, but there's something I've said before. It feels like the SNP just don't want it. It feels like the SNP, some of the members in the SNP, at least some of the politicians in the SNP, don't want independence. They don't want to fight for independence. And I don't mean violence, but I mean genuinely put in the hard work and really push. I know they got the independence referendum back in like 2014, but it feels like they just don't want it as much as kind of the membership want it. That's kind of my take on it, where I think if they wanted to push for it, it's something they should be talking about more and more, really. Stephen Flynn does it kind of during Prime Minister's questions, where he talks about like how is it fair for Scottish people to pay ridiculously high energy bills when we produce so much energy, things like that. We produce so much offshore wind, and I think that's one of the things they could be doing, is saying, look, if we had the money, we could sell bonds, green bonds, we could be building more energy, we could have it controlled by the government rather than by private companies, stuff like that, really. And I feel like they either don't do it enough, or the media don't cover it, or they're just not. Maybe they need to go on social media a lot more. They need to push their message really aggressively and push it all year round, not just, during an election, during a campaign. Just push it all year round and tell people this is where things could be different. Imagine we had Scottish independence. Imagine I had a real weapon. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, one of the problems they run into. Scotland has free prescriptions. The rest of the Union does not. That's a big deal because prescriptions can be expensive depending on what kind of medical ailments you have. Scotland, I think, has either free or cheap university. I can't remember which one because I always get mixed messages on which one's true or not. But it's cheaper than the rest of the Union. That's something they could talk about. Why is it that Scots pay less? These are the things that I think if they focus on the differences more aggressively, that would be important for them. And I think focusing on the fact that regardless of how Scotland votes, the politicians who have the real power, they don't have the same ideals as Scottish people. That's something else they should look at. You know, why is it that Scotland consistently votes for a left-wing party in the SNP and ends up with the Conservative Party, who are, centre-right, but really right-wing at this point? You end up with the Labour Party, who are centre-left, potentially, kind of in the centre-right almost, if you, depending on what was being said. Yeah, I'll talk about the Rayner stuff in a bit, because I've got loads of clips here that I want to talk about today during the stream and also during the week, because I found what she said really stupid, to be honest. So I think that's the way Scottish independence can turn around, and they need to focus on where they are different, I think, rather than anything else. And I think they need to somehow separate Scottish independence more from the SNP, because I think the SNP is not in the best state right now. The optics of it aren't great. I know there's a lot of like media hearsay and speculation and things like that, but I think the Green Party needs to come more into the front. The Scottish Green Party needs to come more into the front and really push as well. And there needs to be a much broader coalition rather than relying on majorly one political party. But again, I'm not Scottish. Some of the stuff I've said might not be the truest, but the way I see it is I just don't think they want it enough. And people can get, some of them can get mad at me for that, but it's like, what are you doing really to get independence? Independence not easy. Verti, I upgraded my Patreon tier, so don't change the Patreons. Don't change the Patreon supporters. I know it's a stupid mistake in the Patreon. I don't use it to view anything. Maybe I should check it from time to time. Yeah, streaming is a bit of a difficult one because there's guests visiting later, and this has come from up top. This is one that's unavoidable. So I can't get away from these guests. Let me put it that way. Not in a mean way. Not in a I don't want to see them, but in a this is the big boss saying you've got guests coming today, and there's nothing you can do about it. So we're going to be ending the stream before they get here, which we got like 40 something minutes. So we've got a while to go. Fearless asking, when do I get my apology for you making me pop a hernia playing Civ? I told brother don't mess with the might of Rome, and he disrespected Saladin that day because Saladin got lit up, and it didn't give me no it brought me no joy to humble Saladin like that. But the might of Rome is the might of Rome. My birthday wasn't on Saturday, so it was good stuff, and yes, I am feeling very old. So that's done for the questions. I don't know if anyone snuck one in. Did anyone sneak? Sometimes you get someone who QA's notorious for it. You'll sneak one in. No, that's all the questions. If you have any questions, you can put them onto this post. Again, if you want to find the community section of my channel, all you have to do is go onto my channel, click the community section, and it'll be a post up here. And I'll try and do it before I end the stream to do the next week's one, just because it's way easier. Yeah, this video was nuts, honestly. This is one of my favourite thumbnails that I've done for a while, taking a victory lap, the big motorcycle. This geezer here did not have a fun time. There are some topics I want to talk about, so I am going to try and do a video on this, which is UK manufacturers warn Brexit's undermining their place in the supply chain. So this is more to do with the high-end industry, to do with like medicines and things like that, where the UK seems to be a decent chunk of the supply chain. Or I say chunk, decent part of the supply chain. And what's happened is that the UK has kind of been taken out of it because of Brexit. The stuff we want to get in costs more money, but more importantly, the stuff we want to export costs a lot more money. It's a lot more of a headache to deal with. So I've got this one in the chamber that I need to just write up and really figure out. So this one will scare the hell out of some people, probably most people. So we're going to cut to some clips here. So yeah, just carry on commenting and stuff, and I'll get to your comments. Green parties, whichever nation needs more funding, more memberships. Yeah, the Green Party, I think they need to push more to try and get media spots and things like that. There's a lot to be desired, I think, from the Scottish Green Party. Hello, Leeds. But at the same time, it's very difficult when your campaign doesn't get any mainstream awareness, if that makes sense. Like when you look at the Brexit movement, they've given season passes, and I'm not just talking about the ones on the Conservative front benches or back benches. I'm talking about like the UKIP, these random people you've never heard of before who are talking about Brexit, and you're just like, why are you getting so much airtime? It don't make sense. So yeah, Joni, how did anyone see that coming? I don't know. But yeah, let's have a listen to this clip, which is about the interest rates.
Does the Fed get to 6? Does the Bank of England get to 7? That's really tough, right? Because you had earlier data out of the UK today showing that the housing data came in at, what, 38 something, which is quite shocking. Housing activity in particular, that's the PMIs in the final print. That's quite
She's talking big nerd here.
important. You've got the housing market really feeling that heat of those interest rates, mortgage rates really soaring, people renegotiating now from those near zero terms. And look, I'm gonna do a mea culpa here. It's definitely central bank's fault. We've maintained, very accommodative monetary policy from the financial crisis onwards, and right now we're raising rates aggressively, massively, quite at a steep rate, and we're expecting the economy to maintain itself. I think not, right?
The mistake was made a while ago. I think seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but they didn't. The English central bank especially had major problems, and it was not dealt with properly. Inflation was always going to hit the UK badly because of Brexit predominantly, and we are where we are, where everything costs way more. So the market's pricing UK interest rates to rise by 6.5% in March. Market price in the UK interest rate. Market price in UK interest rate of 6.5% by March next year. So they're assuming by March of next year we're going to have 6.5% interest rate, the highest level since 1998, and a move that will heap even more pain onto mortgage borrowers. And obviously the bank back then would have been under the government's control. The interest rates were under the government's control until Gordon Brown in the UK made the Bank of England independent. So the peak in the UK interest rate priced by swaps market has risen dramatically in recent weeks from 5% as recently as May to 6.25%. So I think what we might see is less people buying things like bonds because they expect the yields to go up on the bonds next year because the interest rate rise. I think that's generally how it works, or one of the ways it works anyways. The peak in UK interest rates priced by swaps, the self-feeding dynamic here, it's not panic yet, said Peter Shafrick, economist at RBC Capital Markets. As rates are higher, those people who thought yesterday that rates were too high and were opposing more increases, they have thrown in the towel, and they do that as rates go higher. So people have given up. They know the interest rate's going to keep going up, and this is really disastrous for the UK because it means people aren't going to be able to afford as much stuff. It pushes us closer to a recession. Especially, I had these two open for something else. I want to bring in Kate Andrews, the intellectual titan, talking about the NHS. We're going to cover a range of stuff today. The interest rate thing does scare me quite a bit, though. You're going to see a lot more people getting their houses repoed. That's one of the main problems. If you think you had, the interest you're paying on your mortgage was around 2.25%, 0.5% potentially, up to one, I think, depending on who you got your mortgage with. And then, suddenly the base rate has jumped up massively. It's gone up 500% really. When you think about it, it's gone up by 5 percentage points. And so what does that mean for your mortgage? Your mortgage is going to go up tremendously. And how are you supposed to afford it, especially during a cost of living crisis? So intellectual titan Kate Andrews.
Fake consensus that the NHS is the envy of the world. It's not.
My question was, do you think we're going to be richer or poorer as a nation?
I think you're going to be richer. Fake consensus.
I think you're going to be richer. Yeah, this is not a person worth listening to, that's for sure. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about Labour kind of face planting a bit in kind of their interviews, and my kind of frustration with the fact that they can't seem to do interviews properly. And then we're going to be talking about a Tory MP who's had an absolutely torrid time on Question Time, and he made himself look like a bit of an idiot, to be honest.
To look at nationalisation?
I don't think nationalisation, but this is a real problem, Nick. I mean, you know this, and Sue knows this, and across the country, I think there's a revulsion that rivers, our beaches, our seas are polluted.
Well, I think there's revulsion that shareholders have been paid and holes haven't been fixed.
Absolutely.
That's what revolts people.
Comrade Nick Ferrari there.
Regulation needs to be tightened, it needs to be enforced, there needs to be accountability to the top. And I think
What do you mean by that?
That it should go right to the top of the organisation.
She could face criminal charges?
Should be in a position of personal liability, whether that's...
Well, they're not going to face, because the corporate veil exists, so most likely a CEO wouldn't face any criminal punishment or civil punishment.
Civil or criminal, but
so
there
they could.
There
a
needs
water
to be.
boss,
There needs to be.
She knowingly allows these. They could face criminal
There
charges.
needs to be something that goes right to the top, to get this moving. I also think the government needs to have the courage to say we're going to have a look at some of these.
Yeah, utility don't work like that around here. You know, we don't believe in your socialism of being owned by communities. You know, we believe in private business. We're a capitalist country. You know, we're not some little socialist utopia where communities or the government owns the utilities.
Licenses again. This cannot go on.
So they should be stripped of their licenses.
Either removed or tightened. These licenses should be taken down and looked at again. But we can't go on. I think Sue's description is right. The government is, as it doubles as it's sitting this one out, and it's disgusting. They need to do something.
It's doing more than that. It's making it so the Environmental Protection Agency's job is much more difficult because they're massively underfunded. Thanks to Big Dave. The other issue is that they're making it so I think they passed laws to make this stuff easier for them, that they won't be punished for the sewage dumping.
Think about it.
Why not nationalisation or common ownership? I remind you, when you were running for Labour leadership, you used the expression common ownership for industries such as water.
I mean, you could argue we do have common ownership because you can buy shares in these water companies. But
Rail, energy. Is this one of your famous flip-flops, Sakir?
Oh God, the framing is. Is this one of your famous flip-flops? Ooh.
No, Nick, I'm not ideological about this. I'm pretty practical-minded, and that's why in other areas we have said we want a publicly owned company, GB Energy, which will run the energy of the future, I hope. But
we still don't know a lot about GB Energy. We know that the Labour Party have pulled back on many of their promises to invest in green energy, so there's that.
When it comes to water, I looked at the amount of money you'd now have to pay to bring water back into public ownership is huge. And that would simply be used to pay off the shareholders. And I don't know what Sue would think about that if I said my policy. All those shareholders made a huge amount of money. Well, my policy is to use taxpayers' money to pay them off now. I actually think the better route is regulation, enforcing it, and taking these tougher measures that I've outlined.
I don't think on this one, I don't think it's the worst answer in the world to say, like, we're going to look at doing fines and making sure they actually do their job. One of the reasons these companies are making so much in profit is because they're not investing the money into the infrastructure or, cleaning out the sewage, cleaning out the water. So if Labour said we're going to make it so our waters are going to be the best waters in the world, and the way we're going to do that is by enforcing really strict standards on them, and also making sure, there's profit caps or something like that, so they can't just charge people ridiculous amounts of money to do their basic jobs, then you'd have, I think, a much better answer here. But enforcement is the key. The regulations are there. Yeah, that's what they've got to do. But Labour have to promise to do that and make sure it's enforced, within 100 days, really. Well within 100 days. And yeah, I guess, just threaten that. Just say, look, if you do not do your services properly, you will be nationalised. And let's see what happens to the share price when something like that's announced. It's Big Wes Streeting, who struggled as well in his interview. I wouldn't say Keir Starmer did very well here, but his final point, I think, was a decent one. But we'll look at how the rest of the gang are doing.
In our interaction, it's a high bar.
There is an issue of trust and credibility here. Keir Starmer made 10 pledges to the Labour Party when asking to become party leader. They included point 5, which said these words: end outsourcing in our NHS. What did you take to mean those words to mean?
Well, I think that what Keir wants to achieve and what I want to achieve is better value for taxpayers' money. And sometimes I think it is fair to say outsourcing, although notionally about cost saving, is penny wise and pound foolish. And what I would say more generally about the pledges
what do you take as outsourcing?
Well, there are lots.
When he said end outsourcing, didn't he mean end private provision?
Well, I'll give you an example.
That's what I would assume. Ending outsourcing would be the stopping the use of private providers within the healthcare service. That would be my interpretation of outsourcing within the context of the NHS.
That's what he's getting at, isn't it?
Hierarchies.
I'll give you an example.
Is that what that's what it was read at, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it said that. I'll just say.
Yeah, it did say that. When he said he wants to end outsourcing in the NHS. That's what that would typically mean, and he is more...
Made those pledges. The world was yet to change with the pandemic and with the absolute...
When what's it called, Clement Attlee and the gang promised to build the NHS, they didn't realise that, how devastating the war would be for the UK, and therefore he didn't do it. Oh, wait, he did.
absolute state of the public finances. And I hope that people take trust and confidence from the fact that we are not going into the next election making promises that we can't keep, that things that we might like to have done.
Promises I Can't Keep is a great song by Mike Shinoda. It's a really good song, recommend it.
We've had to quite honestly say we're not going to be able to afford to do.
A lot of...
But, you know, what are you going to do then when it comes to the NHS? Like, that's what I'd want to know. What is the plan then? What exactly are you going to do? Because I haven't heard too much in terms of planning, in terms of staff retention instead of new training. I've heard a couple of things, like you're going to get rid of the non-dom tax loopholes and stuff like that. But I want to know exactly how much is that going to generate, and is that stable? Are they just going to leave, etc.? That's what I'd want to see, more actual detailed analysis.
Labour supporters, Labour members will have maybe been shouting at the television when you said that, because a lot of them will feel that the reason that Keir Starmer made these pledges, or a number of them, was because he was trying to win the leadership on the back of quite a left-leaning membership, and he said what he needed to say to win.
100%, that's what he did, 100%.
And then he changed what he did, and a number of Labour supporters might feel betrayed by that.
I think that's a serious...
That's what it's the American system is. You run to the base during the primaries, and then you run back to the centre. GB Energy has unionist Keir given up on Northern Ireland. Oh yeah, that is unfortunate, isn't it? Yeah, that's a whoopsie on his part. You could call it UK Energy, I guess, but it sounds the same. On the gas and electricity transmission networks are owned by Irish semi-state companies whose sole shareholders are government ministers and ESOPs. Buy back the water companies, give them the original share price that they were sold for. I don't think that would work. Yeah, I think you'd face court cases on your hands. I think what you got to do is just fine them, just make sure that force them to do their jobs, and make it so they can't increase the bills. That's what they've got to do. That will put the price down when they want to nationalise them.
It's misrepresentation of the mood of the Labour membership. No one in the Labour Party is feeling betrayed by a leader who has put Labour within touching distance of winning the...
He hasn't put Labour within touching distance of anything. It was handed to him. Literally, like, this poll lead that they've gotten isn't because of great policies or leadership or, what's his face's oratory skills here. You know, he's being handed, it's like racing with someone who's just shooting themselves in the leg repeatedly. That's what we're seeing here.
The next general election.
There are people on the Labour left that will feel betrayed.
Well, I'm sorry, but they have to...
By promises he made to become leader, and then he's backed off from them.
Well, I'm afraid they have to dry their eyes and be glad of the fact that we might finally, after 13 years, get this Conservative government out and have a Labour government able to change our country.
This man's got less riz than Keir Starmer does, and let's be honest now. This is a guy who has ambitions to be Prime Minister. If it's the case, like, this guy is looking to run, I might have to get a Labour membership just so I can vote against him. The guy's an absolute fraud. He is the... if he's voted PM of this country, then he might as well just turn off the lights. At that point, he should have done it after Boris Johnson was elected Prime Minister. But if this guy gets the job role, then he might as well just press /surrender at that point. This is Rayner really not doing great. Yeah.
That comes from the top.
Why aren't you going to get rid
and
of
the
it?
cultural issue
So this is about the anti-protest bills. Or laws even, sorry. Anti-protest laws.
Is very draconian and is about
So why aren't
taking
you
people's
get rid of
rights
it?
away. Well, our culture in the Labour Party government will be somewhat different to that. People should be able to go about their daily business, but also people should also have the right to protest in this country,
So why
as they
aren't you
always
going
have.
to get rid of it?
So they don't really have the right to protest because all police have to say is, we thought you intended to do something that would cause disruption and you're nicked. And we saw it. We saw them, arrest volunteers who were giving out rape alarms to people who were potentially vulnerable and, could have been, victims of all sorts of crimes, and the police arrested them.
Because it's not...
The lack of where's Riz. Oh, no. Where's Riz, Where's no Riz? You can't do it. It's tricky. Is the reason Starmer lets him out the only person? Yeah, honestly, I think that's true. I think that's true. He seems to struggle a lot more than Starmer does in interviews, and it makes Starmer look better.
Question of whether we'll get rid of it or not, the cultural change, and also in terms of our priorities, the
cultural change. Like, I urge people within the Labour Party, right, MPs, go and meet the Met Police, because they don't care about what culture you're going to change. They're going to carry on doing what they want. They will harass protesters. They don't care. They've been proven to be institutionally sexist and racist. Institutionally, fundamentally, at their core, that is what they are. So, what cultural change are you going to bring? Honestly, it's unacceptable, these answers.
King's Bill will have the stuff...
The first King's Bill's fine. Change it in year 2 then. If you guys don't have the intellectual capacity to get this stuff passed in year 1, cool, do it in year 2. What's your plan for year 2? Let's hear it. What's your plan for year 3? Because undoubtedly you will have the time in those years to have done something about these bills, unless you lack the intellectual capacity or something else in order to get this stuff through. It's absolutely just, the amount of stupidity I've seen from people who kind of claim, Labour are going to be too busy to do this stuff. Absolutely untrue. It's absolutely 100% untrue. And those people who tell you that, I kid you not, they're spin merchants. 100% they're spin merchants.
On the future of work, it will make sure that we have rights for people and that we support people in getting through the
rights for people. What rights for people? Which rights? Because they were taken away.
Cost of living crisis. There's a lot of things to do immediately, but the one thing that we won't be doing is acting like Suella Braverman and their government, who have been taking civil rights away and pushing a culture of restricting people and demonising people for exercising.
But it's like
so what you're going to do is just leave it as status quo then. So you're going to say we're not going to make more draconian laws. We're just going to leave it as is. Come on, Raina, There was a Twitter discussion I had with what's her name? No Justice. I think that's her. Is it her? Yeah. And it's obvious. What why she did what she did. But it's just these answers are unacceptable. Honestly, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm gonna hit refresh. We hope and pray that the clip works.
Cultural issue that comes from the top.
So why aren't you going to get rid of it? But all very well, I think what you're saying is
restricting people for exercising our hard-fought rights.
It's like a weapon, Angela, and it's all very well. I think what you're saying is don't worry because we won't use that weapon, but the weapon will still be there. And
it doesn't matter if Labour don't use that weapon because the Met Police will. Do you not understand, Raina? You're not going to be on the streets policing people. This power has been given to the police forces in England and Wales. It doesn't matter what you do or do not do. You're not the one who's going to be locking up protesters. It's going to be the police.
And if you do get into power, then a day will dawn when you're no longer in power and someone else will come in.
I think James O'Brien's interviewing here is so trash because all he's got to say is it doesn't matter what cultural change you're looking to bring. The Met Police have these powers. They can use these powers. Who knows what they will do? They can lock up more and more protesters during big events. What do they not understand here?
And we will
you have the power to legislate to remove that weapon.
And we will look at that. But I'm saying that our priority in the next coming Labour government has to be about tackling the cost of living crisis and about giving people proper standards in work and.
Again, if you're going to do this within the first year, what are you going to do in year 2? Absolutely nothing.
Reversing the attacks on our NHS and our public services that we've seen from the Conservatives, and our culture around people's rights and civil liberties is completely different to Suella Braverman.
This is one of the stupidest answers I've ever seen. You're saying, we're not going to put up more draconian laws, so it's fine. We're not going to do what Braverman does. We're not going to use mean words, but we're going to allow the police to keep these powers. Honestly, this is a terrible interview on 2 levels here. One from Raina, who did really badly, and one from James O'Brien, who didn't ask the right questions. And this obviously from James O'Brien, who said very famously,
Well, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in Keir Starmer not saying he's going to overturn this latest bit of legislation.
No, that's unfortunately a misapprehension. I think that was a consequence of David Lammy saying something on LBC over the weekend.
Yes, I did hear him say
that. And what happens is, I'll explain this to you because it's actually quite important, and it's a mark, of course, of how far LBC has come in recent years. You have some very strange people out there who spend their days desperately trying to resurrect the ghost of Jeremy Corbyn. So David Lammy says something
Who's more obsessed with Jeremy Corbyn, right? Is it the Tory party or is it the people in charge of the Labour Party and kind of centre-left journalists? Who's more obsessed with Jeremy Corbyn, honestly?
The cuff and out of context on LBC, and one of these weirdos clips it up and puts it out as proof that the Labour Party isn't going to be repealing any of this and they're not going to be doing anything at all to to remove legislation that they actually voted against in the first place. But the Labour have since clarified that is not the case at all. Not that it will get tweeted by all the clowns who came across.
Whoopsie. It's awkward from O'Brien. Not the best interviewer in the game, that's for sure. He's no Sophie Ridge, who got big plaudits from me recently in a video I've got coming out. And deservedly so, because she actually held Steve Barclay to account. And now you've got this clip from Angela Rayner about PR.
Would you back PR? Would you vote for it at conference? Would you be supportive of a proposal for proportional representation?
I've said quite categorically my personal view on it is I've yet to be convinced, and I've just outlined the reasons why.
Because
and I know that
people
will shout.
I mean, are the extremists not in now?
Out from each side of that debate, and they feel quite passionate about it. But it will come to conference, and I am a Democrat, and if our party decides that's where it wants to go, then I will be led as part of that, and I will do my leadership in ensuring that democracy prevails in the party. But as part of the debate, I'm not quite there yet.
Actually, this could be a bit of a shark answer from Rayner saying, I'm not convinced yet, but if the party want it, I will implement it. Maybe that's a better answer than I thought, because evidently, she's the one to go against what Starmer is saying, because, Starmer's saying some dumb stuff. But, if she's saying, if the Labour Party want it at conference, then, I'll be there to implement it. I don't know. I don't think that's the worst answer from Rayner, I'll be honest. But, it's not as bad as what we're going to witness here.
Because a windfall tax if the banks don't play ball on savings rates. What do you think?
I agree. I support that 100%.
No, I think that they should just be getting on and making sure they pass that on to savers. I think there is agreement right across the board. That's what needs to happen, and it's time for action.
Okay, so windfall tax though or not?
I mean, the bank should absolutely face a windfall tax because they're making unexpected profits that they don't deserve. They're making ridiculous amounts of money off the mortgages.
No, we've set out plans around how we would have a windfall tax in the oil and gas companies. We've got no further plans of anything of that description. I do just think
if she's come up with that answer, then I think she's going to have to push it. She's going to have to, otherwise people are going to get this clip and they're going to play it. That's it. That's all they have to do. They see this clip. She says, "Look."
Led as part of that, and I am a Democrat, and if our party decides that's where it wants to go.
The only out she can say is, the party didn't decide on it because, Starmer basically blocked it.
A case of the banks taking action and making sure they're passing on those interest rates to savers. It's incredibly important. When mortgage rates go up, they're all too keen to pass that on where it comes to the interest rate, but not for savers. And I think that's...
Why not just make it a law then? Make it a law that if the banks increase mortgage rates by X amount, then savings accounts have to go up by X amount. Why not just do that? I don't know.
A fundamental issue that really does need addressing. And I would say there was agreement across Parliament that needs to happen, but the government really need to put them under pressure to do it.
So what would you do to make them do it then if you were in power?
I think there is a lot the government can do where it comes to the regulator, but also the levers that they have in getting the banks in, telling them what's expected of them, what we would expect for them to be doing and putting that pressure on. And
Nationwide, NatWest, Barclays. We know that interest rates have gone up, so can you put the interest rate up for savers as well, please? You don't want to do that. Cool, sound, mate.
I think it is important that happens. As I say, I think there is widespread agreement that needs to be the case, and we back the government up on measures to make that happen.
So what you're saying, appealing to their better nature, do you think they've got one?
I think the regulator has
just vibes on it.
Has a role to play as well. But actually, governments of all persuasions have powers in terms of the influence and the levers that they can use and the influence they can exert to make change happen. It's not always just about legislation in Parliament. It's about the wider influence that you can bring to bear on decision making.
I think this is what this you can see. Like Starmer's put really wishy-washy people in this team where they cannot give a straight answer to save their lives. A windfall tax on the banks I think would be a great idea, honestly, and it helps Labour with their fiscal whatever nonsense, because it's more tax revenue for them potentially, but these people are just willing to faceplant on every potential opportunity that they have, and this is as a result this is a guy from Delta Poll. It's one of the kind of polling agencies within the UK, and he was saying for Labour to he's predicting that there will be a Labour minority government. At least that's the most likely option.
Is the general election, right? the only poll that matters, as we're always told.
It's true.
How is it looking for Labour? How easy or difficult is it for them to get a workable majority?
Well, there are a number of different ways to look at this. If you look at it in historical terms, the challenge that Labour faced to get just a majority of 2 remains enormous. It's estimated that the swing in the vote that they will require will be close to what Tony Blair achieved in 1997,
and Keir Starmer is no Tony Blair.
Which is also the largest swing that a party has achieved in post-war history. If they're to get a workable majority, so beyond simply 2, then the swing will be far beyond what has ever been achieved in British polling history. And so that's an enormous challenge. But also, there's a year, potentially even 18 months until that election takes place. And it was only a year last week that Boris Johnson was talking about actively thinking of a 3rd term. So a huge amount could happen in the time between now and the general election. But even though they have a strong position in the polls at the moment, you would, by historical standards, expect that to contract, and that challenge facing Labour remains enormous.
So, in other words, you think the most likely outcome is there for, if the polls are to be believed, a Labour minority government starting to talk to different parties, perhaps?
Well, the polls are only ever a snapshot of where we are at the moment. Looking at the historical precedent and what would be required, not now, but perhaps autumn next year, suggests that perhaps some degree of minority government is the most likely option. But a lot can happen between now and then. Things could get much better for Labour. They could get much worse.
And that's important, you know. What Starmer has to do is more than what Tony Blair had to do, and the guys know Tony Blair. The only thing he can hope is people just hate the Tories. Like, genuinely hate the Tories. All right, we're gonna have to end the stream in about 5 minutes, so it's just frustrating. I was going to talk about how Johnny Mercer proved himself to be a clown, but yeah, I'll have to cover it in the week. Oh, days. He compared the NHS to Somalia, the Somalian healthcare system, which was great. The interest rate, the kind of government money just being unsustainable. Civil servants telling the police about more kind of parties happening in Chequers and the police doing nothing, absolutely nothing about it. What's this about? Oh, there's nothing here. And this one. All right, we'll end with this one then.
The cartoon characters inside an asylum centre for children in Dover have been painted over after an order from the immigration minister. Robert Jenrick made the call reportedly because he believed they sent too welcoming a message. The Home Office confirmed the paintings, also depicting Tom and Jerry, and Blue from the Jungle Book, were covered on Tuesday.
So you got these murals, right? Just these like little paintings of cartoon characters. You know, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Big Tom, Jerry, the Mandem. You know, iconic childhood characters. Really, they've been running the game for decades now. And Robert Jenrick was like, "Nah, that's too much. No, it can't be having that. Those are too welcoming. You know, paint over it." Honestly, what an absolute numbskull. But I'm going to have to end the stream here, unfortunately. It's out of my control. So we'll be back next week. And yeah, I'll catch you hopefully next Saturday at 6 p.m. if it's within my hands. Bye-bye.